Thanks, Ross, and thank you for joining me. Tonight, the ABC finally apologises for their obscene attack on Gina Rinehart, but they insist it didn't break their editorial guidelines. I'll get a response from the National's Anne Webster. My exclusive interview with the Palestinian advocate from Gaza who calls out Hamas as the real enemy of the Gazan people. This while Donald Trump again says a deal could be imminent in the Middle East. Alexander Downer joins me. In sport with Mark Robinson, we'll have the latest concussion controversy in the AFL. Let's get into it. Taxpayers fund the ABC to the tune of $1.2 billion a year so that it can employ about 4,000 people who are required under law to provide the nation with fair, objective and informative material that adds to the cultural life of the nation. Yet for all that money, all those people on staff and all that clear guidance about its role, the ABC has taken almost 4 weeks to finally admit that its grotesque, violent and puerile swipe at Gina Rinehart was beyond the pale. For those in doubt, here's the controversial content again. Just sickening. Yet the ABC has spent weeks defending it, deferring to its internal ombudsman. And the Albanese government has been pathetic. Listen to the Communications Minister even this morning.
My personal view is that that was unacceptable, but it's not for me to make that determination. It's for the Ombudsman to do so. And I'll anticipate your next question, Harry. If the Ombudsman finds that, in my view, it's unacceptable, it would be appropriate for the ABC to issue an apology. But what's important is that that process plays out first. And that's what any news publisher would expect the Minister for Communications to act in this process.
What an absolute joke. Just spineless. Now, none of this was going to stand, as I said last night. This stonewalling from the ABC is counterproductive. I guarantee you they will apologise eventually. They have to. The public demands it. It should have happened a week or so ago. And today, surprise, surprise, our own News24 website focused on an ABC online analysis piece that incredibly decided to drag in a reference to Jabba the Hutt. Well, then, of course, the ABC finally must have realised it was digging itself into an ever-deepening hole. A statement was issued by Managing Director Hugh Marks. It said, the ABC apologises to Mrs Rinehart and to anyone else affected or upset by the publication of the film. Hallelujah. The ABC finally sees what anyone with any shred of human decency could have seen from the outset. Just how grown adults could assemble this dross, view it, and then clear it to go on air, then discuss it, defend it and rationalise it is beyond explanation. But even more worrying was what the statement revealed about ABC standards. While the Ombudsman has found that the film did not breach the ABC's editorial policies, said Marks, the ABC acknowledges this episode has fallen short of community expectations. Yeah, so it's community expectations that rule here in the end, not the ABC guidelines. Yeah, the Ombudsman cleared it. This tells you two things. The ABC editorial policies are a sham and the role of an internal Ombudsman is a joke. Marks now says the ABC is going to revise its guidelines as they apply to violence. Look, if you have to devise and print guidelines to tell your reporters and producers that wishing gratuitous violence upon people just because you don't like them is not exemplary public broadcasting, then you are admitting that your whole organisation is out of touch with the very citizens it's supposed to serve. And Marks and his chairman, Kim Williams, and all the other senior executives at the ABC have failed to call out this vile abuse for almost 4 weeks. They stand condemned now, along with the people who produced and aired it. It really has been astonishing to watch. The ABC doesn't mind violent imagery, it doesn't mind foul abuse, and it doesn't mind profanity. But there is one word it seems to have a lot of trouble with. Yeah, just an early, clear and sincere sorry about 3 weeks ago would have cut it. Instead, here's what Marks said late today to one of his own radio stations.
Everybody is entitled to the same treatment by the ABC, and ultimately we felt the treatment of Ms Reinhardt was not fair, and so we apologised and we've edited it and changed the program.
Eventually, a month to come up with that. What have they been thinking? Where is their common sense? Where is their decency? Why do we fund these people? Marks is on about $1 million a year from taxpayers, by the way, and it's taken him all this time to work out that public fantasies about sodomising and killing a prominent woman are not acceptable content for the national broadcaster. It's the same old problem at the ABC. No one is in charge. Let me stay on the ABC and its role in political debate and its complete lack of self-awareness. As you've probably heard, Pauline Hanson banned the ABC and The Guardian from her candidate's announcement in Melbourne on Monday.
ABC were denied entry into here and The Guardian. I'm not putting up with the spin, gotcha moments, wanting to have a go at me or treat us totally different to what you do the other major political parties. Enough is enough.
Now, while I agree with Hanson that the ABC and The Guardian don't report her fairly or objectively, there's no doubt about that, of course, but I reckon she's wrong to ban the ABC because it makes her look kind of weak and because it stops a lot of people around the country hearing from her. But anyway, that's her right. She puts on an event, she can choose who to invite. But the ABC's in high dudgeon, and instead of taking this as a hint to rectify their green left bias, to rein in their visceral antipathy towards the populist right, well, instead they're portraying this as a threat to democracy. On one ABC program, they interviewed a former ABC journalist advocating a media boycott against Hanson and One Nation.
But I think we need to get to a point where journalists stand up and say, if that's what you're going to do to our colleagues, then we're not talking to you either, and starve her of that outlet.
Oh, please. There's nothing the left likes more than a strike or a boycott, hey? You've got to remember that even recently, the ABC has portrayed One Nation as immoral and illegitimate.
We'll see as the votes come through, but that will be key. And that will legitimise them, and I used the term earlier on in the broadcast, the permission structure. If they are able to win their first lower house seat, that begins the process of legitimising them.
It was wrong politically and it was wrong morally. It gave a signal to Liberal voters that it was okay to vote for One Nation.
Now, if that's what they really think, why would they complain about not being able to interview Hanson? Are they trying to legitimise her too now? But if the ABC and their media academic mates really want to talk about accountability and the need for politicians to be open to all for scrutiny, perhaps they could focus on how politicians of the left won't turn up here on News24. Labor and Greens just won't show up here once the sun dips below the yardarm. I can't tell you how often I've asked for Anthony Albanese, Penny Wong, Tony Burke, Chris Bowen, Jim Chalmers, Sarah Hanson-Young, Larissa Waters, Zali Steggall, Allegra Spender, Monique Ryan. I mean, all the Green left, Labor, Greens and Teals, all the lefties run for cover. They don't want you to hear from them. They just never turn up any place that their worldview will be challenged. But I tell you where they do turn up, along with Kevin Rudd and Malcolm Turnbull on regular turnaround, they all turn up on the ABC and they never face a probing question. So explain to me how that is good for democracy. It's really quite weak, but it looks like that's where we've ended up in this increasingly polarised world. Let's catch up now with the Shadow Regional Health Minister, Anne Webster. She joins us live from Mildura. Thanks for joining us, Anne. I want to get you first on the ABC and this belated apology from Hugh Marks. Why has it taken so long? And doesn't that show that they don't seem to understand common decency at the national broadcaster?
Well, you know, we've got a saying out in the regions, which I think actually is said in the cities as well, Chris, and that is it doesn't pass the pub test. And the ABC needs to ask itself, do their actions actually pass the pub test? We're asked it on a frequent basis as politicians. The ABC needs to get a clear-eyed look about whether the things that they do would pass the pub test, particularly out in my electorate, because I can tell you what, I don't believe it would. To take as long as it has for Hugh Marks to make an apology of sorts, and to take down that vile video is just unbelievable. But the other point I would make, Chris, is where is the Prime Minister? Oh, that's right, he's having a holiday. No, where is the Labor Party calling out the ABC and saying, you need to take that down?
Yeah, well, there's absolutely. The government has been pathetic. The Prime Minister does deserve condemnation because he wasn't on leave for the first couple of weeks of this controversy. He's away now, but I thought he's the one to say that you shouldn't disappear when you're on leave. He could easily make a statement on this. It was weak, been really weak of the government not to demand an apology. It's hands off the ABC because that's basically the official propaganda arm of the Green Left. It's pathetic. Let's go on to another one of those Labor front benches who is very much pushing the Green Left line, and that's Chris Bowen. We heard from him yesterday at the National Press Club, and he's doubling down on his renewables push and his net zero push. And this affects people in your region in particular. We've talked to you before about transmission lines in Western Victoria going through properties against the wishes of landholders. And now we learn that some of those farmers have been fined by the Victorian government for not allowing the transmission experts onto their properties. I mean, what's going on here? Do they not have rights over their own land?
Look, well, clearly not in Labor's eyes. What's yours is mine. You know, that's how they operate. What we have is farmers who have been standing their ground on their right to farm. And Australians, everybody I speak to, backs our farmers. They do not back the Victorian Labor government, who have imposed this legislation which doesn't permit farmers to take the Victorian government or VicGrid or any of the other bodies to VCAT. I mean, how on earth? We live in a democracy, last time I checked, and they've imposed these fines and demand that they can come onto farmers' properties. Now, farmers speak to me about the fact that these VicGrid people want to come onto their property, no understanding of biosecurity, no care or concern for their lambing ewes, which is what's going on, and they are being fined now. The farmers are being fined $814, I think it is, dollars for refusing to allow access to VicGrid. And if they don't pay it, and if they continue to say, we don't want you on our properties, they will be charged and they will be fined $12,000. I mean, Ben Carroll is new in the job, but I tell you what, it's the same old, same old. Those fines came out 4 days after he was elected to the role of Premier.
Yeah, extraordinary stuff. And it's all driven, of course, by Labor's obsession with renewables, expensive, unreliable renewables. And Chris Bowen yesterday was doubling down on this, incredibly putting renewables, electricity conditions on AI companies who might want to invest in data centres in Australia. Have a look at this.
Our requirements are very clear that data centres must bring their own additional renewables. If they have sensible firming arrangements with gas as part of that, that's fine. I don't envisage it being needed very often, that's the good news. But it'll be important when it is needed. So I think that's a particularly common sense approach, that gas can be included, but it must support a clear commitment to new, additional 100% renewables.
This is extraordinary. And here you have people, big companies wanting to invest big dollars in Australia and help our economy. We need them. We want them. Instead of saying, come in and just use our electricity, we don't have enough, so they have to provide their own electricity. But renewable electricity in the United States, the equivalent companies are actually building nuclear power stations that benefit everyone. This bloke's going to force them to build unreliable renewables.
Well, and he doesn't think they're going to need to use gas that often. Newsflash, Chris Bowen, we're still using 60% at least coal every day. I mean, this man is doing more for Conservative politics than any other in the Labor Party. I say keep rattling on with the same agenda, the same ideology, because honestly, they are destroying the country. And the more Australians that realise that and recognise that and how disgraceful it is, the more chance there is that we will have a change of government at the next election.
Well, I'll tell you what, on electricity alone, it just has to happen soon. They are literally destroying our energy foundation in this country. It's incredible to see it. But at the same time, mind you, because this is Chris Bowen and Albo and the rest of them think that they can save the planet. At the same time, Chris Bowen doesn't mind flying around the world, chugging out the carbon footprint from his jet plane to the tune of, the last count was $345,000 of taxpayers' money spent on his travel. This is outrageous.
And don't we feel so much holier for him doing that? I don't think so. $345,000 of taxpayer money, that's a problem in itself. And as you rightly point out, and I was thinking about it today, you know, those fumes in the air, oh, well, apparently they don't make any difference to our carbon emissions for those who are really panic-stricken about it. It actually is in nice parallel with the fact that this Labor government is really happy to export our uranium to India, to export our coal to China, to export our gas to Japan, and yet, you know, we can't use the uranium and they don't want us using the coal, and they are hands tied behind their back, up their back, for us to use gas. As Chris says, you know, he doesn't think that we'll have to use too much of that.
It is insane. Thanks for joining us, Anne. I appreciate it. A little bit of common sense from Anne Webster there in Mildura. I want to go to overseas news now, and US strikes on Iran are on hold because President Donald Trump is saying again that he's giving the regime one last chance to make a deal. Have a listen.
I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to kill people. I do not want to kill people. But at some point we're going to... We were set for the biggest attack of any attack, and we've hit them very hard for the last few months. But we were all set for the biggest attack since World War II. And they called me and they said, please don't do it. Let's talk.
Let's go to Australia's longest-serving Foreign Minister, Alexander Downer, joining us from his hometown of Adelaide. Alexander, who's more desperate to make a deal here, Donald Trump or the mullahs in Iran?
Well, the IRGC rather than the mullahs. I think the IRGC would like to do some kind of a deal, but the great leverage they have continues to be some degree of control over the Strait of Hormuz. So if they give up that, they're left with nothing. I mean, their defence force has been depleted substantially. Their nuclear program isn't likely to go anywhere. So it's the Strait of Hormuz or bust as far as the IRGC is concerned.
Yeah, there are reports late today.
Trump.
Oh, sorry to jump in. There were reports late today suggesting there could be an arrangement that shares control of the Strait of Hormuz between Iran and perhaps a coalition of other nations. What do you think about the possibility of that, and will that leave too much power still in Iran's hands?
Right, it's an international waterway in international law, and that should continue to be so. It should revert to the status it had before February the 28th when the war started. And President Trump, the Americans more generally, need to make sure that happens. And I've said on this program quite a few times, they need to get control of the Strait of Hormuz, not allow the Iranians to control it or even to control the northern part of it. I mean, apparently they've done some deal with Oman that they control the north and the Omanis control the south. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm not sure about that. But the Americans need to get this Strait of Hormuz returned to being an international waterway.
Well, I want to get your thoughts on the latest developments in US politics, with the US Democrats in their primary electing a new candidate in Abdul El Sayed, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel bloke. Here's a little of what he's had to say in response to criticism from Donald Trump.
You know, they think that you want to use my whole name against me. Mike, listen, man, if you can't say the name, it's Abdurrahman, keep the name out your damn mouth.
Yeah, and here's a little of what Donald Trump has said about him.
Hater of Jews and a hater of Israel. This guy hates Jews. Somebody said, oh, that's a little strong. No, he hates Jews and he hates Israel. Filth, crime, death, destruction, embarrassment. You lose your home, you lose your apartment, and that's where the communists will take us 100%. When I watch Abdul, he's full of shit.
Strong words there from President Trump, but this is an interesting trend for the Democrats in the US, Alexander, on the back of Mayor Mamdani in New York City. Hard left candidates and obviously Muslim candidates sympathising with Palestine and antagonistic towards Israel. Where is all this heading?
Yeah, I think this is a real problem for the Democrats. They're lurching to the left. Just when the midterms are upon us and they have an excellent chance, particularly in the wake of rising fuel prices, gas prices, as they like to say in America, of seizing control not just of the House of Representatives but the Senate. But just as they are on the threshold of that, they've lurched off to the left. And it seems to me they're going to be very vulnerable. This guy has won what we would call pre-selection, has been chosen as the Democrat candidate in the state of Michigan. Now, there's a retiring Democrat, and so his position will be up for grabs. If the Democrats are going to get control of the Senate, they cannot afford to lose a state like Michigan. And on current polling, they are now going to lose the state of Michigan. So this lurch to the left is, I think it's suicide for the Democrats.
And who are the others in the Democratic camp who can work against that left? It doesn't seem that there's a strong moderate force in the Democrats, either in Washington or even around the states. I mean, you look at a leading governor like Gavin Newsom, I mean, he's pretty hard left himself.
Yeah, but he's not as left as this guy El Sayed. He's Mandami. He's not in the crazy left, as Trump would say, the communist left. I mean, these people are right out there on the far left. Gavin Newsom is, is like left like Albanese, or I mean, he's very much in favour of windmills and taxes and spending taxpayers' money and borrowing for the future, all of that sort of thing. That's certainly part of his formula, but he's not crazy left like this guy.
Yeah, extraordinary stuff. Thanks for joining us, Alexander. Appreciate it. The crazy left on the rise in the United States. They're all, they're everywhere. They're on the rise everywhere, and we'll keep an eye on them, that's for sure. I've got to get to a break. On the other side, I'm going to share with you my exclusive interview with the Palestinian advocate from Gaza who calls out Hamas as the real enemy of the Gazan people. want to go next to that interview I previewed with you last night. Ahmed Fayoud Al-Khatib is a US citizen from Gaza who advocates as a Palestinian Muslim willing to call out the Islamist extremists of Hamas who run Gaza, terrorise Israel and have plunged the region into war. Al-Khatib's monograph, Hamas and the 2 million hostages, was published last month. I caught up with him in the US and started by asking him about the period when he left Gaza in 2005, when Israel was withdrawing and forcing its settlers to leave, giving Gazans an opportunity to grasp their own peace and prosperity before Hamas took control.
Certainly, yes, there's immense uncertainty, but immense hope and optimism that Gaza could evolve to be the crown jewel of the Palestinian people. Gaza was overlooking the Mediterranean. It could have a seaport. It could have an airport once again. It could become a compelling example of what an occupation-free West Bank would look like, to show the world, show the Arabs and the Europeans, but show fellow Israelis as well that this is what we seek. We don't seek the annihilation of the Jewish people, but we seek to build a nation for our people to establish prosperity and emancipation from control of the Israeli military. And unfortunately, Hamas had another agenda in mind. It manipulated the masses with support from the likes of Al Jazeera, through control of mosques, of the schools, for the infiltration of NGOs. And I write about all of that in a book I just published a week ago called Hamas and its 2 million hostages, of how the group leveraged what was intended to be a new pillar of Palestinian political life, the 2006 elections, and instead competed with the idea that they were going to be less corrupt than the Palestinian Authority. They were going to be focused on governance, but that they were going to bring the best of non-corrupt governance with the resistance agenda. It's important to note that didn't just happen in Gaza, that the elections happened in the West Bank, where actually Hamas was more popular in the West Bank than in Gaza. But those were meant to be terms for a few years, and instead what happened was an escalating internal civil war, effectively, between the PA and Hamas, because Hamas refused to adhere to the framework of the elections, of renouncing violence and recognizing the Oslo peace process, recognizing Israel, leading up to June 14th, 2007, the very day of my asylum interview in the United States, when Hamas violently took over the Gaza Strip, ejecting the Palestinian Authority and beginning really the long years of blockade, of repeated wars with Israel, leading once again all the way to October 7th.
You talk about Hamas's 2 million hostages. That is, all the people of Gaza are their hostages. Hamas remains an Islamist outfit committed to the elimination of Israel. Are you saying that the 2 million people in Gaza are effectively hostages, not just to Hamas, but to that cause?
Well, my goal in that title was very specific and deliberate. So Hamas never, even before October 7th, had anything beyond something like 33 to 35% support at most. And part of the timing of October 7th was to address the fact that it was deeply unpopular. Its governance and its control in Gaza has produced nothing but misery and suffering. But even amongst the fact that there's radicalization in Gaza, there are elements of the society that have either historically supported Hamas. There's some ideological support for the group's beliefs and ideology, but also there are those who dislike Hamas but believe in the so-called armed resistance narrative. And what I argue in my text and in a lot of my work and my literature and my writings and my activities, that even those people themselves remain hostages to brainwashing, remain captive to an outdated, corrupt ideology that prevents them from seeking anything else, that has them captured. And so, yes, I very much so do believe that the people of Gaza have been hostages to a mutated version of the Palestinian national project that has nothing to do with statehood and everything to do with cultism, religious fanaticism, and ultimately an agenda of death and destruction and human sacrifice.
Explain this to me. The atrocities of October the 7th, the unspeakable violence committed against innocents there, Hamas conducted it, Hamas orchestrated it. Hamas must have known what that would do to the Gazan people, that it would create the sort of military response that we've seen. But also, it wasn't only Hamas involved in those attacks. Other Palestinian civilians crossed the border and were engaged in that looting and hostage-taking. And we've all seen the footage of people in Gaza cheering and welcoming bodies and hostages taken back into Gaza. Explain all that to me.
Certainly, I saw the same shameful scenes that you and millions of people around the world did of the abuse of hostage bodies, the abuse of living hostages, the what appeared like euphoria among some people. I mean, 70% of Gazans have never left the Gaza Strip. They've been isolated. Something like 2/3 of the population in Gaza are under the age of 30, which means that for most of them, they've only known Hamas's rule. They've only known the tiny piece of the territory. They've only known Israelis and Jews through the prism of the conflict. Some of it was seen as almost, I hate to use this term given the deadly, horrendous consequences of the October 7th. It was almost like a day picnic. Some of them, they just were looters. Let's assume that between supporters of Hamas, the participants in celebrations, those who visibly endorsed the October 7th massacre, anywhere between 100 to 300,000 people. That still ultimately leaves 2 million people, of whom the majority are under the age of 30, who did not participate in the attack, who were not part of Hamas, who are not part of the armed struggle, armed resistance narrative. And so that's where I argue that there are tiers of the population. There are tiers of opposition to Hamas. There are tiers of support for Hamas. And it does no one any service to, if you want to understand Gaza's population, to think of them in this carte blanche. They're all Hamas. They're all terrorists. They're all participants in this.
The people of Gaza are in dire straits at the moment because of the war deliberately started by Hamas. They need a better future. Who is the bigger threat to the future of Gazans? Is it Hamas and other Islamist extremist groups, or the State of Israel?
Well, I mean, on the one, like I'm a believer in multiple truths. I very much so believe that Hamas and the Islamist groups and the terror groups are a clear and a present existential threat to the people of Gaza. And I'm speaking specifically about Gaza. I think my family would still be alive. Tens of thousands of Palestinians would still be alive. Most of Gaza would not be destroyed if Hamas had simply made different choices on October 7th, kept its fighters at home, came out, instead of carrying out the single worst day attack on the Jewish people, said that maybe we actually endorse the two-state solution. We're going to take all of our weapons and we're just going to stash them away and not use them. And we're willing to actually work with Israel. I mean, just imagine if Hamas had done that on October 7th instead of what they did. The first step to empowering the Palestinian people is to restore a sense of agency and responsibility. I use the metaphor of a friend of yours that is driving intoxicated, and a good friend would take the keys away, not pour more liquor as the friend is about to drive away. And similarly, instead of pushing the Palestinians to say what you did on October 7th is a disaster, we've had a global reaction that unfortunately in academic circles, in media circles, in journalism, in student circles, etc., that are like, well, we can't tell the Palestinians how to resist. This is the result of 1948 and a whole host of attempts to justify the unjustifiable.
Ahmed, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's so right. So many people trying to justify what happened on October the 7th only feed Hamas, only supports Hamas and their evil agenda. Brilliant stuff there from Ahmed Al-Khatib. Don't forget, coming up in this program, I'll have the National Cabinet with Mark Nicholson. He's mocked politicians for a long while. Now he wants to be one. But up next, I'll have Mark Robinson with sport. We'll look at the latest concussion controversy. Don't go away. Let's catch up on the weekend sport and cross to sports broadcaster Mark Robinson. Mark, good to catch up with you again. I notice you're moonlighting this week on Channel 7's The Front Bar, getting back into the footy world, swapping some old war stories.
Yeah, it was a bit of fun.
Yeah.
It was a bit of fun. They invited me on, but save the best for you, Christopher.
No, it was good stuff. Great to hear some of those stories. No doubt you could talk for hours about the stories of your many, many years of footy reporting. And I want to get on to a big AFL story today, and that is a revelation that at the powerful Geelong Footy Club, an unnamed player, they say, is written into his contract that he takes responsibility, really, for any outcomes from concussion, right? He's going to basically wear the risk so that they're not stuck with some sort of claim down the track. What does this mean for the game?
No, it means heaps. It's bigger than a big story, mate. This is on the precipice of a scandal. You know, either the player's manager or the club first broached the idea of putting a clause in his contract. Now, to put a clause in a contract like that, to say that if anything happens to you, we're not going to be liable financially, they knew the player was vulnerable.
Exactly.
And forever and a day, the AFL says the number one priority is the health and safety of the players. Was the health and safety of this player taken into account when he said, no, I'll play, but should the club and his manager say, hey, we don't think this is a good idea. But anyway, they haven't put the health and safety of the player first. Now, where this goes down the big rabbit hole, Chris, the big rabbit hole. Allegedly, it's gone to the board, or reportedly, it's gone to the Geelong board to tick it off. It's already gone through the general manager of football, the CEO, the board. Now, the head of the board, or the chairman of the board at the time, was Craig Drummond. And you know where Craig Drummond is right now?
Yeah, he's at headquarters.
Chairman of the AFL Commission.
Yeah.
Now, when a big story breaks like this, you generally hear from the AFL and maybe the club involved on the day. Nothing as yet. Nothing from the AFL. I'd imagine they're scrambling around dealing with lawyers all day. I'll put it to you this way. That's the political mess and the concussion mess. Craig, Chris, if you had a child playing for Geelong and you found out that your son had signed a waiver in his contract to say, yeah, I know I've had 3 or more concussions, I'm a bit vulnerable, but I'm not going to say. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it is a massive issue. If they have that concerns, then they know it's not in the best interest of that person to be playing footy, and they shouldn't farm that responsibility onto their shoulders. You know how keen people are to play. It's a big livelihood. There's a lot more than just money in it. But, yeah, it's a real worry. It's a real worry. This is such a big issue for all contact sports, especially the tougher ones like League and Aussie rules, and all the way down to where I coach in the under-13s. I tell you, we have very serious protocols now around head injuries, and it's this example from Geelong. We'll wait and find out all of the facts, but as you say, a scandal there seems to be looming. I want to go to another sport. Does anybody remember this bloke out on the centre wicket? Michael Hussey there, a century against India at the SCG in 2012. Just a terrific batsman. I've never met him, but I'm told he's an absolutely ripping bloke, known as Mr. Cricket, mind you. Don't tell me he's going to go and teach the Poms how to bat.
Isn't it funny, the English? They just finished with Brendan McCullum, so they hire Stephen Fleming, who's highly regarded in the cricket world, and now they're potentially going to hire Mike Hussey. Now, I don't disagree that Mike Hussey would be fantastic at the job. You listen to the cricket like I do. Mike Hussey, I think, is close to the best technical commentator in the game. When he talks cricket, he talks not emotion. He talks, punter's another one, but he talks so diligently about how shots should be played and how the field should be placed. I really enjoy his commentary, but the Poms, when's the last time they had a homegrown coach over there?
Oh dear, I think I just wonder. You got to get the best coach available, yeah. But you'd want somebody who's on board with you. Maybe Hussey's. Maybe he could be a secret plant for us. He could be undermining them. No, I know he'd do a professional job, but it is extraordinary. Let me just go to a bit of golf and have a look at this. This is the Live Golf in Adelaide. Modern golf, a hole-in-one and beer everywhere, but apparently it's safe. A lot of clouds over Live Golf, but a new investor is found, and that's very important, especially for Adelaide.
Oh, the Adelaide event's fantastic. I often wonder, Chris, and I don't know if you do, are all the other Live events around the world as engaging as what we see in South Australia? I don't know that. It's to find, what's it, $350 million investor because the Saudis are getting out. Yes, it saves it, but I still think it's obscene prize money.
Yeah.
For a second-tier competition. Now, they're going to be announcing in the next month who are some of the players that will be going into this tour next year. And Cam Smith, I think, is committed again. But it is obscene amount of money for a second-tier competition.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Thanks for joining us, Robbo. We'll catch you next week. We're going to get to a break after that. I want to catch up with Mark Nicholson now. He's been mocking politicians for years. Now he wants to be one. Don't go away. Now, we normally call it the National Cabinet this time on a Thursday with Tim Blair and Mark Nicholson, but Tim Blair's away. And, Mark, last week I joked that you'd have to have all the portfolios given you were the only member around for the day. And now you're actually going into politics, quite serious. Let's start off on the serious note. You've been identified as one of the One Nation candidates in the Victorian state election, an announcement on Monday. Congratulations. What's driven you to this?
Mate, well, firstly, I was biting my tongue that entire cross we had last week. I just wanted to scream it at the top of my lungs. But really, mate, it's like we pick on Victoria every single week on this show, and there comes a point where you either are happy to sit idly by on the sidelines, or when the opportunity came, it was step up and join the fight. And I love this state, desperately love this state, so I wanted to jump in there. I fully believe in One Nation and Pauline Hanson, so I had to get in there. But I want to say this, mate, don't ever let me, even if I get my seat in Parliament, don't ever let me become a bloody politician. That's the key, is if you ever catch me using mealy-mouthed weasel words, having that dead look in my eye that Ben Carroll and all of them have. If you ever catch me doing that, give me a clip around the ears, because I deserve it, and Victorians deserve better than that as well. So that's why I'm stepping up.
We will clip that up and we'll put that in a safe place and make sure we use it against you if we need to in the future. Let's go to the launch on Monday. Here's some of what Pauline had to say.
They have failed the people of this state. That's why it's in the situation it is now. So we are here as ordinary Australians, standing up, fighting for our state, our country. We want it back.
Yeah, so there you were among other upper house candidates, but that leaves about 88 candidates yet to come for all the lower house seats around Victoria. When will they be announced? Because the election's not too far off.
Mate, any minute now. They are just putting the final touches on all of that. You can't fault it. They know what they're doing. They're building up momentum. They're getting it out there. So it's I'm very excited. This is going to be a very, very different election, and One Nation aren't letting anyone else dictate the way we're going to run this election. We're really feeling the moment. We can have a real opportunity to change Victoria. So, and we're demonstrating that we can do it. Well,
You've already become a bit of a front man for One Nation, warming up the crowd and the like. Here you were at Pauline Hanson's One Nation fundraiser later that evening in Hawthorn.
Today is the beginning of the end of the socialist left's stranglehold over this state. You've been called the dark forces. The dark forces. What a stark contrast this room is to the banshees that are outside. This room is buzzing with optimism. It's buzzing with patriotism. This is by far the best place in Australia to be right now.
No, I was there. It was a good night. We'll go to what was happening outside first. But you've just got to promise me this and our viewers this, mate. You've made us laugh over the last few years. You've been the best in the country at mocking politicians. How are you going to keep mocking them when you are one?
Mate, never going to stop. It's a hobby of mine. I'm very lucky. I've turned a hobby of mine into a business. That's not going to go away. And if anything, I think I'm just going to be able to get more information once I'm in there. Once I see how it all operates, I'll have even more information to exploit for comedy and in the cartoon series. I'm looking forward to it. But don't stress, it's not going away, mate. And with parliamentary privilege, mate, this is going to be fun.
Exactly. Cartoons formulated with parliamentary privilege. This could be very, very special. You referred to the protesters outside of that event at Hawthorn in your speech there. Let's have a look at this little clip of the protesters. I think I got this on my iPhone on the way in, and listen to what they're saying. Unite, unite, unite to fight the right. Now, I found this amazing, right? So for many, many years, you know, they've demonised anyone right of centre. You know, John Howard was evil, Ronald Reagan was evil, and they accused Pauline Hanson of being racist or xenophobic or idiotic and all the rest of it. Now they've just cut away. It's just the right. They oppose the other side of politics, carte blanche.
Yeah, you're right. And honestly, I meant it when I said it in that speech. And you were there in the room. There was so much optimism. There's so much hope. It's buzzing. Everyone was smiling and happy. Stark contrast to what it's like out there. And I remember when I first arrived at Monash University, I walked up to the booth for the Socialist Alternative, and I remember looking at them and they were angry, they were sad. I thought they were uncool, uneducated and unwashed. They're their own worst advertisement. So the more they do this stuff, the more that they turn people against them. And I think it's a good thing because people are seeing that Pauline's the real deal, we're all happy people, and we've got an optimistic outlook for the future. It's great.
Well, I met a few people in there that I'll be able to share with viewers at a later date. One of them was a Sikh gentleman with an astounding... his turban was in One Nation orange, which I thought was astounding. Another bloke wanted a photo with me.
Awesome.
He's the brother of a very prominent ABC presenter. So there were all sorts in there. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us, Mark. We'll catch you next week. Mark Nicholson there, who's behind the Please Explain cartoons and also now an upper house candidate for One Nation in the Victorian state election. Look, we got a lot of feedback from you today regarding Chris Bowen at the press club yesterday. Suffice to say, you all thought that he was hopeless and that he's promising to destroy our energy grid. Have a good weekend. Peter Credlin up next.